I think anything around sports, so you think about live sports as really having a moment. It all starts with the consumer. So right now, 4 out of 5 consumers are saying that they're sports fans. We've seen that grown over 20% even in the last year or two. And I think that obviously pushes all the publishers, even outside of traditional broadcast publishers, to try to get the rights because they know the impact it has, not only to engage with the consumer, but on the total ecosystem of the company. So then part 2 of that is how do we bring in advertisers? It has to work for them too, not just for the consumer. And what we're seeing is all metrics rise, right? Brand familiarity, engagement. I think the biggest one that advertisers are actually judging themselves on, because it's an easy metric to watch, is search. We're seeing like a 60% rise in search from advertisers who participate in live and live sports. And then I think the other thing is, if you think we're here in the land of creativity, it's about planning, right? You can plan your creative a year or 2 out. You can plan your retail activations. You can plan everything around a sports event in a really long time span, including product launches, etc. So the whole marketing org can rise around it, and I think it's a really impactful thing for advertisers.
And so we're seeing across the industry the power of live programming, obviously sports included in that. What unique opportunities exist in this space, and are they different from linear and from streaming, or can you talk a little about that?
I think, look, we're in a world that is largely disconnected, even though we're more connected than ever, and I'm not the first person to ever say that, right? We all know that. And in the world of disconnection, even though you're connected on your phone and other platforms through personalization and everything is being handed to you for you, there's like a level of isolation that brings too. And I think live sports or live events is the complete opposite, right? People and advertisers are tuning in to be part of a moment, like whatever the new version of water cooler is, which is probably on your social feeds talking about it. And not only that, they've made a decision to tune in and watch it, right? Like I think we saw this year, the rise, it was like the highest number for the Kentucky Derby, a rise of viewing parties for events like the Kentucky Derby. And then you start to think about something like the Paris Olympics last year, where literally the whole world was talking about it, and we had completely re-engineered the way we brought that to the consumer.
So while we're talking about engagement, one of the most engaging formats we've seen grown tremendously across screens is shoppability and shoppable TV. How is NBCUniversal thinking about the rise of commerce? And have you continued collaborating with brands? And what does that look like for NBC?
Look, I think inherently we've all known the power that TV, whether it's streaming or linear, has on shopping, because most advertisers are running a business. And whether you're out there seeking brand awareness, at the end of the day, you have to sell something, and we're really the vehicle to help you do that, for lack of a better term. And I think there's the moment of shopping where you have the QR code and you can buy it in the moment, but there's a level where it impacts consideration. So even if you're not buying the product in that second via that QR code, it's making you think differently about the ad, the product, and where it was. So yeah, we have 2 major partners. We have more, but you think about 2 companies that have been doing this for a while. Instacart, where we partnered with them in the Paris Olympics this year to do something called virtual concessions, where you could order right in the moment what you needed so that you didn't have to leave your spot. And then we've partnered with Walmart this year around the Thanksgiving Day football game, the NFL game. And you think about that, like a moment where families are coming together, they're around the screen, and we create a moment for them to not only think about these products in a different way, but again, whether they're buying them on the spot or buying them later, we've seen a rise in all metrics around it.
So Maureen, in your role, you're at the front lines of brand partnerships. What are you hearing from brands, and what are they looking for from a sports, a live, and really an engagement perspective?
Everybody wants to know what's next. If I had the answer to that, I would probably be living in Cannes full time, but they start a lot of questions with, what's the next WNBA? We've been talking about women's sports for so long, and here it is. So if we think about even the next 2 years, or the investments NBCU has made, right, next February, we have a 2-week period where we have the Milan Olympics, the Super Bowl, and the NBA All-Star Game within 2 weeks. And I say all that because that also will lead to the Spanish language rights that we have via Telemundo for the World Cup. So I think anything around sports is super interesting. And I'll go back to the Paris Olympics again. You could either watch it live on linear, brought to you by Mike Tirico in a highly curated environment, or you could go on Peacock and you could watch volleyball or paddle or whatever it is that you were looking for in that moment. And by the way, we didn't care how you watched it because consumers engaged, all boats rise. And I think the stat that we have is 86% of people that watch the Olympics actually watched it on linear at some point. And it's a multiplier effect, right? It's the same for brands, not just for NBCU, where they're coming in and out of the ecosystem. But if I really think about what's next, to get your question, you know, we have a domestic Olympics in LA 28 literally around the corner. So you think about young athletes getting ready to train. We've had several athletes who are commentators for us come on air and say, oh my gosh, if I could redo it again and I could go back and train, I would do it. And you think about leading into a domestic game and then leading out of a domestic game, coupled with what we did around the Paris Olympics, we're about to head into Milan. I think anything around that sports environment, and you think about the entertainment capital with LA, I think will be super interesting to think about the whole ecosystem around the Olympics.
That's great. And as we wrap up this conversation, what advice can you give our colleagues, the media buying industry, on how to think about NBCUniversal, how to engage in the streaming versus linear?
Yeah, look, I think, and again, brands have said this, there's the consumer connection and there's the cultural connection. We've been at the heart of that for a long time, and I think what's changed is there's so many different ways to connect, right? So we've talked about sports and Olympics. The Bravo fans are equally, if not more, avid than perhaps even sports fans. Or if you even think about news, and people are leaned in and watching it for a reason. So I think it's, and look, the thing that we don't talk about enough, I don't think, is the quality of our own production. There's a lot of people in the game, and it's bringing a lot of content to a lot of people in meaningful ways. But when I look at sort of the quality of the production that we put out there and how consumers lean in, I think it, again, I keep going back, it has a multiplier effect for brands, and all boats rise when you think about that.